Live, hello everybody, welcome to Forever Rugby on Fair Sports. It is a Tuesday night and we are, what are we, 9 hours, 8 hours since Jacques Nienaber has named his side for the end of year tour, where the Springboks will be playing against Scotland, Wales and England. And quite an interesting reaction, I suppose, to the squad itself. A lot of people very upset at certain players not being included. Some people sort of justifying those decisions. But it's a bit of an interesting one. It's an interesting one, and I think it's going to be a very interesting couple of games. And it's quite sort of reflective of, I reckon, of sort of the goal of the tour in terms of the squad we picked. Because I don't think, the Springboks haven't necessarily done a lot of rotation, but I suppose the argument as well is the fact that a lot of the players in the squad didn't actually get a lot of opportunities during the Rugby Championship. So as a result, it could still lead itself to quite a lot of rotation in and around the squad, with the likes of players like Apele Fassi, Damian Willemse, Grant Williams, Joseph Dwebe, players like that. Even Kobus Reinach, obviously, Herschel Yankees haven't had as much game time as people would probably have liked them to have seen. Even people like, I suppose, JC Creel, even something like an Alton Yankees, a lot of people have obviously been part of the squad throughout the year, but not a lot of people have had that much playing time, And I think if we look at some of the playing time that a lot of the squad members have, it's not particularly even. Somebody like a Marvin Ory's played once the entire year, really, or I think twice maybe. So it's interesting that there's been a big sort of call and people saying that we had to have we should have put a lot more players in it and sort of established depth. But at the same time, who do you leave out? Who don't you take? Because I think that's what's quite interesting at the moment, is the fact that there's been quite a lot of sort of debate and outrage over players who haven't been called up, like an Evan Roux, like a Warwick Halant. But there hasn't been that much talk about the players who've actually been dropped. And there have been a lot of players dropped when you think that the squad that went over to Australia initially was 45 man strong, and now we're taking a 32. So, 13 players. Not 30 players. No, it's 13. Is it 13? Yeah, 13 players have sort of been dropped from the squad, and yet those sort of players don't seem to be the ones that people are upset about not sort of having gone. So it's interesting. It's interesting, and I think that at the end of the day, the Springbok fans are very rarely pleased, to be honest. The first thing people said when we lost those 3 matches in a row was that the coaching staff need to go, that the players aren't good enough, that that we're fraud number one, we don't deserve it, boring rugby, etc., etc., etc. Then you beat New Zealand, and that sort of goes away. And I would have been interested to see, had they gone with a slightly more rotated squad and not gotten the results, would the reaction be, it's okay, we're blooding the youngsters? Or would the reaction be, it's not good enough, as opposed to now going with the core of the sort of same squad, and results have to be the order of the day. But having said that, I think that had everyone been fit for this tour, there are a lot of players in the squad that wouldn't actually be there as well, and you could probably sort of justify that. If Archie Snyman is fit, he's involved in the squad. If Frans Malherbe is fit, he's involved in the squad. If Faf de Klerk is fit, he's involved in the squad. If Pierre Steph de Toy is fit, he's involved with the squad. If Frans Malherbe is fit, he's involved with the squad. So we're talking about, Cheslin Kolbe is fit, he's in the squad. So we've got about 6 or 7 players who have actually been ruled out of the tour, which means that actually, when you think about it, there are 7 players currently in the squad that probably wouldn't have been there had everyone been available. So I think on reflection, I think it's a pretty predictable squad, and I think it's a pretty fair squad because, at the end of the day, can you sort of people sort of saying that. Look, I'm the first to say that I think there are certain players that probably shouldn't be there. In fact, but to be honest, I think I'd only make 2 changes to the entire squad, and I think my changes for the squad would probably have been to have taken an Evan Roux and Albert Lowe or someone of the likes ahead of maybe Marvin Ory. And the other one would have probably been to maybe have left somebody like France Day behind and taken Warwick Gelant. But over and above that, I think it gets quite tricky. And I think there are as many people saying that France Stain shouldn't go, as there are people saying that France Stain should go, and people saying that look how well he played against New Zealand. And whereas, the counter argument is sitting there saying, well, will he get to the next World Cup? He's currently 33 years old. He will be 35 in the next World Cup. Will he be involved? And if the answer is no, should we not be blooding new players, stuff like that? So it's quite a sort of bit of a chicken egg situation where I think, we're never really going to be that pleased sort of either way. I think that, as I think the Springbok public's a very difficult public to please. And I think it's just going to be interesting to see how we use the current squad. In that the likes of Afasi hasn't had a lot of game time. You sort of mentioned. So if you look at the sort of the squad, it's an Ultimate Rugby here. Joseph Dwebe for the Springboks this year so far has had a full. Where we at? Throughout the entire Rugby Championship, he played 43 minutes. And the British Irish Lions, he played 39 minutes. And so, we're talking about someone who's played very little rugby for the Springboks. Damien Willems has not played a lot of rugby for the Springboks. Afasi has not played a lot of rugby for the Springboks. So the counter argument towards not having necessarily as many sort of new call-up stuff like that is the fact that we still need to try and find time to give the current squad members who haven't got a chance to give them a chance. Alton Yankees has only started one game for the Springboks and he's come off the bench for one. So, everyone's calling for Johan Goosen. Doesn't make sense for, even if he was fit, for a Johan Goosen to go with the squad, get all this game time ahead of an Alton Yankees, who is technically your second choice. So, I think that that's kind of where I'm at, in that I don't mind the squad at all, because I think, as I said, I think it's pretty much as strong as we sort of go. Maybe two calls, but I think you can justify both. But I think what's quite important is to try and use the entire squad that we have taken and to give players who haven't yet the entire year an opportunity. And I think it is building depth to a certain degree. As I said, we've got a squad of 32. If you use the squad of 32 very, very well, then you've given 32 players, game time in the Springbok jersey, which don't include 7 injuries who are pretty regular players. Faf de Klerk is starting scrum half, Chesn Colby starting wing, Frans Malherbe starting the tight head, Peter Steph the Toy starting lock, Arcus Neyman gets into the 23. There are a lot of players who aren't involved that are either starters or sort of immediate 23 squad members. So, if we do get Salman Murat get some game time, that's building depth. If Afasi gets 2 games, that is still building depth. So I think they pretty much got 90% correct, to be perfectly honest. I don't think that if you wanted to include, say, Evan Roos and Ulrich Lowe, who are you dropping out of the current set? People saying that Kwagga Smith needs to be dropped. How can you look at Kwagga Smith's performances against New Zealand and possibly think that he should be dropped? I don't understand which games you've been watching if sort of that's the attitude. Couple of calls on Jasper Wiese. Once again, I haven't been blown away by Jasper Wiese, but you can't drop a guy after 4 or 5. How many tests has he had this year? He's played a couple. I'll give him that. He has played a couple. But how can you justify, dropping someone who, even in those tests, has had a man of the match performance? So it's such a tricky sort of balancing act that the Springbok squad sort of coaches have, and I think that generally, I'm pretty happy with the squad. And I think that whilst there is maybe a sort of case to rest certain players, I think they have had a reasonable amount, and by the time they play again against Scotland, Wales, and England, they wouldn't have played for a month. So they have had 2 weeks off and then back into training. And if they weren't going on the end of year tour, it would have been depending on sort of the players. Some of them would have the opportunity to rest. Some of them actually wouldn't. Some of them would be going straight back into their franchise and stuff like that. So, I think that it's easy to look at Eddie Jones naming a pretty young squad and getting very sort of excited and stuff like that. But if you want to say if you're going to rest Franco Mostert, is he somebody that wants to rest? He was rested for that last sort of game. So who are you resting in the squad? in terms of game time. Do you think Sia Khaleesi wants to rest? I don't think these players do want to rest. I don't think they need to rest. But I would like to see more of the squad being used towards sort of the end of the year. So let's see what we've got in the comments, stuff like that. So just sort of going through it. Maurice Stan has retired. He announced his retirement today. The squad is smaller because there are fewer COVID restrictions. You can fly players immediately in. You don't have to worry about quarantining and stuff like that, which makes replacing players much easier. This is a much more standard sort of tour squad size. That's the reason there. To start, Fassi staying at fullback for this November tour. Would love to see more bolters. This tour should be used to blood players. But I think it still can be. I think that a lot of people are saying that Damian Willems hasn't been good enough and doesn't deserve to be there. Now, if Damian Willems is going to be part of the squad, he himself has not played a lot of rugby for the Springboks so far this season. Across the Rugby Championship, he played 111 minutes, so one game in 21 minutes, and the British and Irish Lions played a combined 43 minutes. So that's the, and then he played 26 minutes against Georgia. So you're talking about someone who's had basically 150 odd minutes in a Springbok jersey this year, mostly off the bench, and I don't think anything longer than 25 minutes at a go. So I would like to see Damian Willems get a decent run. Give him a start. Give Apelele Fassi a start. Give Joseph Dwebe more time. Give Salman Murat some game time. Give Grant Williams a debut. Give Herschel Yankees a start. I think we can still do a lot to blood players and to build depth, even within the sort of a fixed squad we have. Remembering that we had a 45-man squad that we didn't. We probably used about 29, 30 players, maybe. So I think there's still a lot that needs to be said and a lot that needs to be done with the current group of players. Katana says Roux should not start at any time at most in jersey 23. Visa gives anxiety. Him starting maybe to remove the anxiety. Besides, Quacker is good in jersey 20. Plus Van Staden as jumper sub on 19. Standard doesn't really jump, does he? Roux knocks the ball so much they should start Fassi, staying, and Yakubu must come back to the box. Should if you players need a rest, start Fassi, bench Stain, so that Fassi gets wrong, Stain comes on. I'd rather see a youngster like Fassi making mistakes rather than Villy. Where are we at? Williams has been fine, very good defense at 12. You hear about Sean Winnie? Yeah, I did hear him. I spoke about the other day. It's pretty tragic news from that. David says, give Bongi a rest. He's the obvious number 2. We learn nothing from playing him. Dwebe and Mark should play. Well, if he's the obvious number 2, what's wrong with playing him either? I don't think Bongi. I'd like to see Joseph Dwebe, but let's be honest. If we look at game time here, I don't think Bongi Mbonambi's played more than Malcolm Marx, just by the way. Bongi Mbonambi so far this year in the Rugby Championship played 198 minutes. British and Irish Lions played 151 minutes. So, 198 is 200, so call it sort of 350. If we go look at Malcolm Marx in the Rugby Championship, he played 240 minutes, and the British and Irish Lions played. So he did. So Malcolm Marx has played more for the Springboks this year than Bongi Mbonambi has, for example. So, I'd be happy to see Bongi and Joseph Dwebe have a go. And then a week later, Malcolm Marx and Joseph Dwebe. You can almost sort of go a combination. I would almost actually give each of them a start every game. Or else you can say Bongi starts one, Joseph Dwebe starts the other, and whoever started best starts the third one, with Malcolm Marx consistently coming onto the field for 40, 41, 48 minutes at a time. I've got no issue with Malcolm Marx coming off the bench. I really don't think it's an issue. I think people have made it a lot bigger of an issue than it really needs to be. I think it's I think he's so good on the bench. He's so important at that stage of the game. Why can't he do that? Viewers says Thomas needs to start because he has just been too good. Look, it's not like the current players have been bad. Do you think we will start our strongest teams against everyone, the others just there to give hope? I think we'll probably go with our strongest team against Wales. But I don't know. I'm interested to sort of see what we're going to do against Scotland, because look, Scotland are not a bad side by any means. Also, fun fact: the last time we won all 3 tests in an outgoing series was 2013. So it's been 8 years since we've actually gone to an overseas tour and actually won all the matches on tour. So it's also quite a big ask. I think you also, sort of need to think about that. So it's as I said, it's going to be an interesting sort of 3 weeks. I'm not going to get too upset at the moment. I'm definitely giving the benefit of the doubt. I want to see what I want to see what they're going to do. I want to see what sort of lineup they're going to put out. And I just hope that we sort of see more of the squad. If we go with 32 players and we use all 32 players, so that by the time we get back, Grant Williams has a cap, Salman Murat has a cap, I'll be happy. I'll be very, very happy. I still think that Warwick probably needs to be there. I still think that they could have maybe taken another loose forward, but I think that we're really nitpicking, aren't we? If we're looking at it, it's 2 players maybe. But I would like to see us be a bit braver and maybe against Scotland. If you can go and beat Wales against Scotland, start a Willemse at 12, start an Alton Yankees at 10, start a Hershey Yankees, you start a Grant Williams if you want, and see if you can do it. We do tend to sort of often try and give players a start in their first game where you can always sort of pull them off if it's not going well, as opposed to bringing them on and then being stuck with them. So I would love to against the Scotland who do play with a lot of pace. Have Dave Willemse at inside centre, have a player Fassi playing as well. Try and up the tempo a little bit. See what we can do. See what they can do. Give these players a chance. I think Alton Yankees is a very good case to start a fly half in the first test. And fly half is a bit of an issue for the Springboks, given the fact that we don't actually currently have a third choice because our third choice retired this morning. And I don't think that there are any other players currently who are fit that even come close. Jan Goosen was playing well, but I didn't think he actually played particularly well in the URC games before he got injured. And now he's obviously injured. Jordan Hendrickse is currently injured. People have talked about Kate Voliter. I mean, Kate Voliter has played about 110 minutes of professional rugby in his career. You can't be putting into a Springbok squad after that. At least something like Jordan Hendrickse, whilst he's the same age, has played almost 6 times as many minutes as a Kate Voliter. But Buddha Chamberlain's not ready to be a Springbok. Chris Smith has never been able to sort of nail down the number 10 at Bulls. He's not ready to be a Springbok. Tim Sweel has been dropped from Arnie Liebach. Is he ready to be a Springbok? So, yeah, I also think we need to be quite realistic with where we are. But yeah, let's see what everyone said. Gareth Bates back on YouTube. Good to see. Springboks must watch out for Scotland because they wear the taxon to the Wallabies. If we don't win all the matches, we are really bad. They shouldn't stand a chance. Again, I've just said that we haven't won all 3 matches on a tour since 2013. England are a quality side. Wales won the 6 Nations. I don't think, guys, we will lose rugby matches at the end of the day. We will lose rugby matches. That doesn't mean you have to be happy about it, but if we lose a game and we play well, that's sport. It will happen. I think we need to get away from this. We cannot afford to ever lose a match ever because that's just bullshit. At the end of the day, we will lose matches. And if we get beaten by a bad team, we get beaten by a bad team. Guess what? We lost against Australia. Everyone had a meltdown, and then we beat New Zealand. So I've never really sort of subscribed to this whole you have to win every single match at all time at all costs. We will lose matches. I think it's inevitable. A lot of it comes to the manner in which you lose and what sort of you achieve through these losses. Because if you play a second string side and they lose to Scotland, I don't care. If it means that some of these youngsters can get an opportunity and they stand up and they play well, I can get over that. Look, obviously, if we play the same 15 for all 3 tests and we lose 2 out of 3, I'm not going to be happy with that. But I don't think we can ever say at one stage that we can't lose a single match and we'll be furious if we do, because every match has to be assessed on its merits. And the entire tour itself needs to be assessed once the tour is finished in terms of is it assessed or not or whatever. Youngsters, did I understand correctly? Some players will not pick because they have obligation with French clubs. No, that's not the case. So the French clubs, Rule 9 or the international law means that everybody becomes available for their national side after the 31st of October, which is obviously next weekend. Now, we leave for France this weekend. We then go to Cardiff on the 31st. So, that's why, players can be, Andre Paul is a French player. I think we've got about 4 or 5 French players involved in the squad, but they're involved and there's no issue there. They just can't be involved in the first leg because they are still playing, same as players for the Premiership, for example. Technically, I suppose they probably could have called up David D'Alendi up to Munster because they're playing this weekend. But yeah, so all those players will join up the squad after the 31st when that sort of test window officially opens. PSC agrees totally with the chosen squad. We need to make sure of the, not quite sure, of the young Stormers fly half, which won. Johan says they should start a more backline counter-attack team against Wales because they have a grip on us since they play a similar game style to us. So we also have to use the backline loss against them. Does Green not play 10? No, not really. Plays wing and fullback. But he's another player that could have been involved. But if you had Tyron Green there ahead of like an upper Fassi, nobody would have been happy. If you'd had there in front of us, Blue and Corsi, that would have been harsh. Again, I think I would have, if there's one backline player I would have left out, well, maybe two, it probably would have been JC Creel or France Day, just because of the age issue with France Day. I'm still not convinced he will be there in the next World Cup. Some people are, some people aren't. I'm not. And I think JC Creel hasn't been particularly impressive, but then who you looking at for outside centre? You'd have to roll a dice maybe with Warwick Lunt. I don't think Similani's been playing enough to warrant playing outside centre. You could maybe go with the Serfontaine route. A lot of people calling for him. I wouldn't have minded that. But after that, Esterhazen's an inside centre. Ryan Janssen Rensburg's an inside centre. So outside centre is a little bit of an issue depth-wise when it comes to South African rugby. Says we will choke Wales if we use the backline more against them and stop playing the forward game against them. You go to All Black versus USA game. I haven't got the schedule set sort of this weekend. We might. But yeah, Simon Gilliso says, yes, we'll lose matches, but we need to move from the narrative that we'll lose matches to be happy winning a dead rubber game against New Zealand all the time. We are world champions. Oh, dude, you know what? If you're an unhappy Springbok supporter, then go and be miserable somewhere. At the end of the day, if I told you 6 months ago we're going to win the British and Irish Lions series, we're going to beat New Zealand and Australia, we're not going to win the rugby championship, are you going to sit there and say that's a colossal failure? I don't think we've appreciated how tough a year it is, how strange of a year it has been. For the side. So if you want to be a miserable supporter and not be happy with it, then go for it. I really could not. I'm not saying I'm ecstatic. I don't think it's the best year the Springboks have ever had. I do think it's a successful year. I think any year where you win the British and Irish Lions series, I think is a successful year. I think any year where you beat New Zealand overseas is a successful year. If you're doing both of those things. So if we've done both those things, we had hard games in the Rugby Championship. It happens. We've got an appalling record in Australia. The best Springbok sides of the past struggled to win in Australia. But we've done some big things. And we've got 3 matches at the end of the year. And let's wait and see what happens. I think if you're not happy with the Springboks and you're not a happy Springbok fan, I think it's because you're finding things not to look. I think on the face of it, I think it's been a pretty decent year, and I really don't think there's cause for that much concern. I think obviously things can improve. Things can always improve. As an All Blacks fan, we sitting there saying this is a fantastic year, but you'll look 2019 and say it was a terrible year. As a British and Irish Lions fan, you're sitting there thinking, what a terrible year. As an Australian fan, you're excited about the future, but as an Argentina fan, you've had a horrendous year. So. I mean, it's the small margins, isn't it? But I don't think it's that deep. Where are we at? That's just we also haven't played any rugby for 2020. I reckon just one more new play. Need to revamp this backline. Sashwan Murat and John Dupree is there. He was part of the group. Look, Salman Murat, I think probably would have been ahead of the Dupree brothers initially. Rassie Erasmus is a massive, massive fan of Salman Murat. Basically, it sounds like he actually would have been part of the British and Irish Lions squad and the larger squad had he not had that neck injury. So I think he's probably ahead of quite a few people. And I think had he not had that injury, I think he probably would have been there ahead of a Nicholas Janssen van Rensburg. He would have been ahead of a Marvin Uri. I think there is something. I don't think there are issues with the Dupree brothers. I just don't think, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's a case that they don't fit in with the game plan. I don't know if it's a case that they don't train well, but they've just never really settled into the squad. I don't know what the reason is. Maybe it's one of those things we'll find in a couple of years' time. But I don't know. But I'm not upset by seeing Salman Murat there. I really rate him. I think he is a tremendous player for the future. So I don't have too many issues with it. It's, at the end of the day, we've got 240 minutes of rugby left to the end of the year. How much rugby are people going to get? And if they kept the Dupree twins, I think people still wouldn't be happy with Evan Roos not being there. I think people still would have been happy with certain other players not being there. So it's 6 for one, half dozen the other for that one. Will be great to see Fassi in action. I think we will. The squad should have decreased to 35 man, not 32. 32 has always been the standard, though, hasn't it? You go back to the 2019 World Cup, and it was 32 was a very normal number. So yeah, I mean, look, I would have been all for a 35 man squad if we want to take 3 extra players to go and carry some bags, be part of the setup and stuff like that. But it's not out of this. It's not unusual to see a 32 man squad. Kensington Corsi for 13. Him and out centre will be great. Electric and powerful player. Him versus the likes of Tuolagi, Slade, North, and Harris would be such a centre clash for sure. I don't think. I think Spur and Corsi have been so good on the wing that I mean, it doesn't make much sense when Jesse Creel can't get a game at outside centre to play Corsi ahead of him. I think Corsi starts at 14. I would probably prefer to see Corsi and an Apple Fassi wing combination than moving around Corsi. YouTube channel called the Kiwi lads. I do. Obviously, I know, man, players and coaches have said they want to win every game, set themselves aside from other BOK teams and win in between World Cups. I don't like the whole winning one game means a good season. Well, we haven't won one game. We've only lost. We've won us. I mean, we won one game against New Zealand. We lost a game against New Zealand. We lost both games against Australia. We won both games against Argentina. We won 2 games against British and Irish Lions. We lost 1 and we beat Georgia. So, I mean, it's not one game, is it? It's a series. It happens every 12 years. And it's a game to regain the number 1 spot. So, I mean, it's not, as I said, if we had just won one game the entire year, then we wouldn't have been happy. Obviously, this coaches want to win games. We do want to win games. But we will lose games, and that happens. I understand that the frustration comes because you only play about 12 tests a year. And obviously, you want to be winning as many of those as possible. So at maximum, we won't win all. Or I mean, how many are we playing this year? We played 3 against British and Irish Lions, Georgia. Then you've got the 6. So we're going to play 13 tests, and we've lost the 2 against Australia, New Zealand, and things. So out of 13 tests, we can win a maximum, and 1 against British and Irish Lions, 2 against Australia, 1 against New Zealand. So out of the 13 tests this year, we can win a maximum of 9. Now 8 out of 13, 9 out of 13. 6 1 after dozen the other. If we, as I said, if we rotate against Scotland and we lose that game, and it's close and competitive, I can get behind that. At the end of the day, I know that they do say they want to sort of set themselves up from other teams, but I think rugby is a game judged by silverware, isn't it? It's all very well for England to go on to have gone on these runs, but Wales have got more Six Nations titles in the last few years. We've got that World Cup. We've got a couple of rugby championships. So it's tricky, isn't it? It's always tricky. France can play some brilliant rugby, but where's the silverware? Where's the silverware to show? Kanye says, why is Villy still there? What does he have that is so special? I mean, if you guys thought that Villy Roux wasn't going to be part of the squad, then you haven't been paying attention. Not that I'm saying he needs to start, but you're not going to go from having started every single test bar 1 the entire year. He was not going to be dropped from the squad. So if you're surprised that Villy's there, then you're just in denial because he was always going to be there. Pimpy could have been rested. They could have unleashed Edel van der Merwe and Roscoe Speckman on this tour. Again, if you're talking about wanting to build for the future, Roscoe Speckman at 32 years old, 33 in April. Is he one for the future? Edel van der Merwe, I don't think actually deserves to be there just yet. I think he's had some good moments and he's had some bad moments. And look, he's coming to the Lions, so I'm keen to see him. But Josh Tomway is probably ahead of the game. But there's also people like Dylan Lates, Raymond Ruler, who's been overseas. And then again, so I mean, do you need to race Pimpy? I think he doesn't necessarily need to play every game. I think Fassi can play, but do you need to leave him behind? Yes, I do agree that we aim to win all test matches next year, offer enough opportunity for new players. We've got Wales coming in next year, so I'm interested to see how we go with that one. The De Pere twins must come back to the box. Are the team in France or not? They leave this weekend. What's strange is that the De Pere twins show so much potential but haven't stepped up. The squad shows we're thinking short term when every game we're not creating a bigger pool of players. Look, Warner Stain just retired today and we only have 2 recognized flop. Yeah, but let's be honest. Who would we take? Who would we take? Name a fly half that you would take right now. Who you, if you want to name a third choice fly half, who are you taking in South Africa? Chris Smith? I had a laugh with Chamberlain yesterday. He wouldn't deserve it though if he did go. I mean, I'm not saying he wouldn't deserve it. Is Buddha Chamberlain a Springbok fly half? No, he's not. Is anyone currently in South Africa a Springbok fly half? No, they're not. So I think that a fly half, I understand that we need more. But Johan Wilson's injured, Kate Volter's injured, Jordan Henry is injured, which means you're going to go for a Tim Swiel, a Monty Liebach, a Buddha Chamberlain, a Cohen Bosch not even playing fly half at the moment, Chris Smith. You're not. I mean, I don't think that any of those players. Damien Williams said they do back at fly half if needs be, and Frans Steyn can play at fly half if needs be. So I think fly half is an issue. There's no doubt that fly half is an issue, but I think that we just don't currently have the depth. At the end of the day, we need to get past three. We need to get past these three sort of games. And again, for all that it's a short-term thinking squad, there are 7 injuries. So there are 7 players that will get a chance this tour that wouldn't have gotten a chance otherwise. Where's the building towards World Cup 2023? It's virtually less than 2 years away. Well, I suppose it depends. As I said, it depends on what you kind of consider a building for the depth. I mean, with all these injuries, basically 39 players are sort of part of a very big core squad. We've also had certain players who are not. And look, as I said, it's 50-50. You can't just go and decide, right, we're going to leave Sia Khaleesi, Malcolm Marx, Dwayne van Meulen, Andre Parra. We're just going to leave out half the squad and bring in the youngsters. At the end of the day, people talking about our aging squad, it's not as old as I think people think it is. Yes, we're building towards 2023. Are there more than 3 or 4 players that have a question mark over them in terms of playing the next World Cup? I don't think there are. I think Frans Steyn, Dwayne van Meulen are the big ones. After that, Villiers at 34 is not that big of a question mark for me. Trevin Yekani at 34 is not that big of a question mark for me. Morné Steyn's gone. So I still think that majority of the squad is our squad in 2 years' time, based on form. We are bringing in Jasper Wiese. Clark Smith is getting more game time. Kobus Reinach is becoming more of a frequent thing. Herschel Yankees is still building his Springbok career. Damien Willems is still building his Springbok career. Apelele Fassi is still building his Springbok career. Spurk Horsey's got less than 20 caps. Salman Murat's now been called up. Marvin Ory's only got 4 or 5 caps. Joseph Dwebe's one for the future. So I think we're being harsh if we're saying that there's no look towards the 2023. I think that there have been quite a few debuts over the last sort of year. Joseph Dwebe is a debutant. Jasper Wiese is a debutant. Apelele Fassi has debuted this year. Jaden Hendricks has debuted this year. If Grant Williams plays, he's debuted this year. If Salman Murat plays, he debuts. If Grant Williams plays, he debuts. So there have been debuts. Oxen Chair is back, basically almost re-debuted this year. He wasn't involved in the box squad since 2019 over the USA. So we have brought in a good 6 or 7 new players who weren't there 2 years ago. So I think there has been a certain amount. Now, people would want to see more, and that's fine. But to say that there hasn't been any sort of building of depth, I think is a bit harsh. But Joe, we're not going to go for that long today. I've got other stuff to do. It's been a long day, so we're probably going to wrap it up in about 5 minutes. But Zan, I don't know what you're talking about, so I'm sort of squeezing that comment. BOK coach don't get paid enough, says Graham. What's up? Hello, Hayden. Don't forget we gave a young 18-year-old Francis Steyn a chance. Why not take Smith? Which Smith? Which Smith are we talking about? How do you know season? No, it's not about the box, but what do we think about how bad the URC refs were robbing Bulls and Sharks? It's an interesting statistic about that in terms of penalty count, that it's actually not as hectic as we probably think. I don't think that the video surfacing I don't really like them, to be honest. I think it's very easy to pull up a video about anything, and if you're going to put any referee on a microscope identifying 50-50 calls, I think there are a couple of trends that need to be fixing. I think we are definitely probably overrating the extent of what it is true. I think there are issues, but I don't think it's as major as I think we'd like to believe. Greer says Cohen Bosch could be potential flyer, but he's currently not playing well, or even at flyer half. Jan says Buddha Chamberlain is growing, but he must play more for the Sharks before he can become a BOK. Exactly. FC does that from the Bulls. Yeah, but if someone's not playing for the Bulls, you're not really going to go into the Springbok squad now, are you? I was just thinking JC will benefit from leaving Japan, playing something competitive like Premiership Top 14. I think JC Kriel needs to get back into South Africa if he wants to really push back into that BOK squad. I think it's difficult. I don't think you ever really get respected enough that much playing for Japan. As much as people can sit there saying they're all quality players, I don't think anyone really rates Japan highly enough. So I think if Jesse Creel really wants to sort of get his Springbok career back on track, come back to South Africa and play for one of the sides, They should have put Dylan Later, Warwick Galant at fullback. Chris Smith, yeah, but I mean, Chris Smith has what has a good Currie Cup final. If you're not starting for your franchise, I don't see how you can be in the Springbok squad. People didn't even, I mean, people were having an absolute meltdown that Chris Smith was going to have to start the Currie Cup final. He played well, but I'm saying people were worried about it. So does he suddenly all of a sudden become BOK squad material? I can understand why there isn't a fly half. I just don't think we have any in the country at the moment, which is a major concern. But and something we need to look at in the next year. But interesting to sort of see how that kind of sort of plans out. Why not bring in Green and Esterhazen? Yeah, look, I think Tyron Green's definitely on the radar. I mean, Jacques Nienaber didn't want to really drop names, but I think Tyron Green's definitely on the radar. Again, he could have been there, but who would you drop for? I mean, that's always an interesting question because I would like to see a Warwick Galant ahead of a Frans Steyn or a Tyron Green ahead of a Frans Steyn. A lot of people are then saying, "No, how can you drop Frans Steyn?" Now, if you're not dropping Frans Steyn and you want to bring these players in, are you dropping Makazole Mapimpi? Are you dropping Spoo and Corsi? Are you dropping Apelele Fassi? He's hardly at game time. Same as the loose forwards. It's easy to say, oh, the Dupree twins need to be in there. Okay, cool. The Dupree twins need to come get in there. So you can drop Marvin Ori. Okay, cool. Now who are you dropping? You're dropping Jasper Wiese, who's had a man of the match performance in the Rugby Championship. You're dropping Kwaka Smith, who had 2 storming games against New Zealand. You're dropping Marco van Staden, who had that brilliant cameo and looked really good in the Premiership in his debut. You know, you're not dropping Siya Kolisi, who's probably been one of the best Springboks performers the entire year. So it's tricky because just remember, it's easy to say bring these players in, but if you bring these players in, you're leaving players out. So if you want to bring in 2 backline players, so like Henry was saying, you want to bring in Green and Esterhazen, who are you leaving out? Now, if you're leaving out Jesse Creel and a Frans Steyn, for example, you don't have an outside center. You don't have a single recognized outside center in that entire squad after Lekanyam. Do you really want to be going into that? It's tricky. It's tricky. Isn't Chesney in France already? Chesney is in France, but he's not involved in this in the end of year tour. He is injured. Obviously, the Scots and Welsh said they've been complaining about the Irish refs for a while. Apparently, the URC refs don't have any proper academy or anything. There's a huge problem. Yeah, I wouldn't really know much about that. Like the new 50-22 rule that will be added a while ago. It's not bad. It's been used quite effectively sometimes. Someone will definitely be a future captain. No ways Green's great to play for England. He expressed desire to play for the Box. He also spoke to us before leaving. Yeah, no, the biggest thing he said when he left overseas was, will he still be able to play for the Springboks? And they said, yeah, you would. So I don't think he'll go. I only want to see Galant at full back. Yeah, I would have also liked to have seen that. Who should be our captain next after Sia? A couple of people saying Lekanya. I think PFC Bootleg is the future captain. Salman Ras, not a bad shout. But yeah, we're gonna call it there. I know it's a bit early. It's just been a very long day. So we'll call it again there. We'll probably be live again on Thursday for our panel show and stuff like that. And we've got URC action this weekend. Obviously, no SA sides. We will have a schedule of watch along and stuff like that for this weekend. So check that out on the channel. And yeah, check out Jacques Nienaber's press conference. It's currently on the channel as well. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, everybody. And I'll chat to you guys all very soon.